Assalamu alaikum and good morning. Welcome back to all participants to our 14th Malaysian Hospice Conference. We hope everyone had a productive and beneficial day yesterday. We thought the talks were fantastic and we hope you did too. We hope you're well rested and energized for another morning of great talks from speakers all around the world. Today we'll be starting off with two plenaries. The first plenary will be given by Dr. Frank Ferris. Dr. Ferris is a clinical professor in the Department of Family and Preventive Medicine, University of California, San Diego School of Medicine, San Diego, and concurrent assistant professor at the Department of Family and Community Medicine and member Joint Center for Bioethics, University of Toronto in Canada. Clinically, he's a consultant at the International Palliative Care Initiative's Network Public Health Program, Open Society Institute, New York, and is one of the members of the member of the board International Association for Hospice and Palliative Care. He's also the co-principal of the Education on Palliative and End of Life Care project based at Northwestern University Medical School, Chicago, Illinois. He writes many books related to care at the end of life. Frank also led the Sarawak ASCO training, which was held last year, which I and many others had the privilege to graduate from. That's enough from me. Let's now welcome Frank to the stage to share with us on developing let's start again, to share with us on developing sustainable education programs in palliative care. Welcome, Frank.
Are we there?
Hello,
Yes.
Frank.
Okay. Good to go?
Good to go.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. It's an honor to be back with many of you and with new faces. I had such a wonderful time when I was in Kuching in Sarawak recently, and I'm delighted and really honored to be here with you to talk a little bit more about education strategies and specifically how we can develop sustainable education programs in palliative care, something that's been dear to my heart for years and years and years. So you know a little bit about me, and if you're wanting to have my slides, you're welcome to do that. I have nothing to declare, and I invite people to actually download the slides. You're even welcome to adapt them if you'd like to. So I'm going to be talking about, first of all, principles guiding effective education, giving you a case example of a sustainable program that I've developed, and we'll highlight the importance of education and how we can adapt and actually do a ripple effect. So let's start with the principles guiding effective education. You know, it's really important for us to understand how people learn. We create short-term memory when we're in the room with people conveying information, as long as they can hear us and they can take it in. Of course, we need to speak slowly enough and be able to articulate. We then create immediate and long-term memory, and at best, we get 3 facts in an hour, as really people can only listen for a few minutes and then they need a rest break. You can hear that part of what I like to do is take a breath to give you a rest break. So we've thought about how people learn, and now we actually want to think about educational strategies. Our educational program needs to have some very broad goals. Are we at the stage which is the hardest of creating awareness and changing attitudes? Are we there to convey facts, the knowledge? Are we about trying to actually build skills? And then the next very hard one is, are we trying to change behaviors? The way we construct a sustainable education program will very much matter to get to one level or the next or the next. And then, of course, in terms of evaluation, we can evaluate the learners, but are we actually having an impact on patients and families, our own organizations and society? That's the tough part. And I won't be addressing that today because that really does take another entire discussion. Hank Slotnick did a beautiful job of summarizing the principles of learning in healthcare. And you know these from your own experience. Every time I've given a talk and asked people, what did they enjoy about learning? They said, I loved it when it was practical. I loved it when I got to participate. And I loved it when people recognized that there were multiple demands in my life and they didn't run overtime. So those need to be taken into account. We also need to think about effective teaching techniques. We don't know much about online learning yet in the context of simply watching a video or reading a book, but we do know that the retention from a lecture is only about 10%. If we make it more interactive and go to small group case-based discussions, it goes up to about 25% of what we cover is retained. And if we actually get involved in getting people to try it and build skills and do role plays, it goes up to 35%. So you can see the participatory really matters, doesn't it? It's also important to incorporate ongoing repetition. If you don't repeat and reinforce within 1 week, retention drops to 0. Isn't that staggeringly awful? I know people who've spent hours preparing these content go, oh my gosh. But if you've been sitting in the audience, don't you feel that way? I certainly do. I don't remember, even sometimes to remember what the title was. So it's important for us to remember that when we're doing education, it's actually theater. 60% of our effectiveness is our physical presence. And I'm hoping you're watching me even now. I'm trying to give you some physical presence even over this virtual platform. And then it's about our emotional commitment. Are we passionate about what we're talking about? I hope you can feel that from me. And guess what? Back to the 10%. Only 10% of your effectiveness is your content. So, with this in mind, you need to plan your presentation carefully, don't you? And you need to begin with the end in mind. You want to invite people into your fascinating idea. Remind them that in a 40-minute hour, there's just one main point in that session. I need to remind myself about that. And I get 2 or 3 supporting points. And what I'm going to say to you without question is less is always more. So, my goodness, you notice I said a 40-minute hour. Why is that? Well, if we've got people for an hour, don't they usually arrive a little late? And aren't they starting to think about their next activity about 10 before the end of the hour? Think about yourself. Isn't that what you normally do? I imagine yes, if you tell the truth. So you may only really get 1 or 2 key take-home messages. And then, of course, we need to think about incorporating, because it's theater, active learning styles. Careful with our slides for the visual learners. Add some videos to change the pace. And again, add to the rhythm of what you're doing. And the theaters, cases are always so helpful to bring it and make it very practical. And what's helpful is contrasting cases. Or maybe you take it that next step of simulated patients, which is what I like to incorporate, particularly into communication skills, even remotely. And of course, lots of questions. I like to use poll everywhere personally, but although there are many polling tools, and I use those for my virtual teaching, of course, in the classroom, we can just ask questions. Some of them may be rhetorical, some of them we may want comments, some of them are the polls, but I also want people to reflect, and I incorporate reflection heavily in my curriculum. What I've seen, particularly in palliative medicine, is people begin to relate because of their experiences, and people can tell you what they want if it's their turn. Of course, we can go out into small groups, discussion groups, buzz groups. Those are fantastic. And as I put together the 12-week curriculum for you folks in Malaysia, 9 of our 12 sessions were at least 50% or almost all in small groups. Took a lot of facilitators, but boy, the facilitators enjoyed doing it just as much as you all enjoyed participating in it. And then one thing I really want to emphasize, if we're putting together a sustainable curriculum, you and I need to recognize and respect copyrights. Please, particularly if you're going to put this online, never publish images or tables from a publication, a journal, another source, even the internet, without permissions. And sometimes if you're looking at images on the internet, it's like, oh my, this is really hard to find. Now, there is the Creative Commons. So, what I like to suggest is let's use Creative Commons or even draw our own images. Please don't use your favorite cartoons or images. Get the permissions. You do a summary of a table that's in a paper for the key points. Don't put out 20 lines when I can't even read them. It's just not good. And then, as I've said, it's theater. So, and 60% of your effectiveness is your presentation skills. So, if you're really going to develop a sustainable curriculum, you need to practice this. It's about your movement, your dress, the way you look, your body, your position. You can see I've been very careful about where I am on camera. I'm watching you on camera. I'm using my hands periodically. I'm modulating my voice, my volume, my tone, and my speed. And I'm trying to look directly at you. If I'm in the room and a live presentation, it'll be one person, one thought to maintain the eye contact. What you'll discover is this really takes some practice. We actually did a session in Kuching while we were there, and wow, people were really challenged by it. We had lots of comments. It was a real skill to be learned. And of course, as I highlighted, 30% of your effectiveness is your emotional commitment. So, how are you grabbing your audience, doing a great opening, conveying your knowledge and your passion about the subject, and how are you closing effectively? These are all important. So, you'll notice I started out with the 10%, which is the content, and then I went to the 60 and the 30. This is where we often don't spend the energy, but we need to. And I got to tell you, I've looked at a lot of really bad slides in my career. You know I've been participating with ASCO in many programs. Oncologists are some of the worst in terms of their slides. Please make them simple. Get rid of unnecessary words. You're going to talk around all of this. And better still, rather than putting forward a whole pile of data, what's the most important part from the data? Can you craft it and put it in an image or a graphic or a quick table and tell the story about it? You don't have to have all the data on the screen. I'm hoping you're watching my slide construction. I've been very careful about it. And finally, for an effective curriculum, if we're going to be live, face to face, or we're going to be even virtual in breakout groups and interacting, we all need to learn to give effective feedback. What I would call the 3 C's, giving a compliment, something that's constructive, that will be a behavior change, and then talking about, through a compliment, how that will improve the impact of the person. This is actually a core coaching skill. And if we're going to be the preceptors and the facilitators, we need to get really quite good at this. And finally, these days, and you're using it today, technology. It ensures the content is easily accessible. Make sure it's open access if you possibly can. Things that are behind financial barriers don't go very far, in my experience, particularly if we go to countries with limited resources and salaries. It's a real problem. Find and provide easy access to supplemental resources. either through Dropbox or direct links if they're open access resources. People don't have access to many of the articles and the important literature we have. We need to give people access to this. So, what's an example of all of this? I'd like to share with you what I've done in my education programs as a sustainable example. The first is for us to recognize who are the customers of our education programs. And I bet you're all saying it's the learners. And I'm going to say to you, absolutely not the first most important customer. They are not the most important customer. The most important customer is the organization that wants you to put the program on, the host organization. So, in my particular case, for the example I'm going to give you, it's Ohio University who want their learners to get this education. The learners are the second most important. It also turns out that my organizational administration is important. And if there's a funder in the background, because doing sustainable educational strategies does cost money, they're going to be important customers. So, the very first step when we ask ourselves, what do our customers want from us? Of course, they want us to help them achieve their goals. Go and talk to them. And even as I put together the curricular materials for Malaysia in the beginning, I spent a fair bit of time with Richard Lim and a couple of your other colleagues talking through what do you want? With Sharon Chu, with others who are involved in Sarawak. What do you want in this program? It's a stepwise approach, but we need to help people achieve their goals, not our goals. So, my example is Ohio University Medical School. The challenge they have is palliative medicine is a compulsory credit. We had actually been doing a 2-week in-person course for them for a while. They said, well, we want to make sure every physician has primary level palliative care skills. So we called the program A Taste of Palliative Medicine. These are not people learning to be experts. And we actually said we want people to be not threatened by this course. It's not going to have any formal testing as a part of it. We did daily classroom sessions. We were live and in person. And then people went to the bedside and did patient and family care to practice all those skills. It was working beautifully. We had done it for a long time. I had started off developing curriculum, as was mentioned, with the EPIC project at the American Medical Association. I went on, along with colleagues, to be a leader in developing EPIC oncology back in 2005. And we had already, through our programs by 2021, 2021, put together a new curriculum, the Palliative Care Interdisciplinary Curriculum, to keep it up to date. It was a joint project of Ohio Health, where I've been working and continue to work part-time, the Ohio State University, and Nationwide Children's Hospital, our second largest pediatric hospital in the country. We were using this curriculum for our learners, but we were also using it for fellowship training. We decided that we would capture a lot of these teaching opportunities as documentary style modules, and we had developed over 25 of those modules. We were using them in the beginning as a flipped classroom with our in-person learners, getting used to the ideas, giving them access to the core content that they could watch again and again if they wanted to. And then suddenly, our pandemic hit. And of course, as Winston Churchill said, never let a good crisis go to waste. The dean of Ohio University called me 3 weeks later and said, I have 120 students who will not graduate unless they get a palliative medicine credit. Can you help? And my response was, you betcha I could help. Where he surprised me next was to say, I need you to start in 3 weeks. And I went, oh my goodness. But we had the tools, we had the skills, and we put together a package for him. There was initially absolutely no bedside training. So everybody across the state of Ohio that Ohio University was touching was remote. Fortunately, we have been able to get some people back to bedside training. So we've really now developed a flipped classroom model, and some learners are incorporating bedside teaching. It's gotten better and better. However, we still have some remote learners with only virtual learning. There tend to be remote from Columbus, Ohio, where I'm based, and other parts of the state, because the programs that we're providing them with bedside training have not been able to take them back. Again, it may be attrition of the clinicians or too much work. There just hasn't been the possibility. So it was important for us, as we embrace the flipped classroom, the virtual learning, and our next iteration of our product, to really think about our objectives. We're focused on hospice and palliative medicine, an overview, symptom management, which wouldn't surprise you, effective communication and decision making, maybe that surprises you to be doing that virtually, supportive care, last hours of life, no surprise. The impact of love, the desire to protect, and loss have become an important part of what we do, as well as resilience. The role of osteopathic manipulation in the course, because these students are all learning manipulation. And finally, personal reflection becomes very important. So, what does the program look like? This is our most recent agenda. I'd like to give you a bit of an overview. Each day starts with us doing virtual teaching. In order to prepare people, we've asked them to watch some videos for self-study. They then come into the virtual session, and we still do this, even though some people are remote and some people are bedside. We've captured everybody in the group, and we have a live session. Only in the beginning is it actually a lecture to introduce content. All of the other 9 days are interactive case-based discussions. Our goal in the live sessions is to really enhance and reinforce content they've seen in the videos. When we actually get to the communication skills, we have a simulated patient session. Some of you will have participated in that with us, have met Alexa Bailey or some of our other simulated patients. And then finally, by 9:30 in the morning, people actually who are able to go to start to see patients go to bedside teaching. And now at multiple sites, we're now able to do that for quite a few people. But still, we have some remote learners who are going to do all their learning at home. You'll also notice every day there's reflection. We felt it was important to develop this sort of group learning, small bedside or small group case-based learning, introducing and maintaining all of these principles. For the second week, the variation is we've added extra sessions for our remote learners, because of course they would feel a little bit left out because they're not actually going to the bedside. So we have an extra simulated patient session with them, as well as now we have an open session, which is just for them. They can tell us what they want to talk about. And finally, everybody gets together on the last day to present a personal reflection project, something which inspired them during the course of the 10 days together, or the 2 weeks, and something that they incorporate from the arts and humanities. I've actually been doing this since the year 2000. When I was at San Diego Hospice, we started this. We now have hundreds of projects that have come out of physicians and students. It's amazing what they create. And actually, I experienced this yesterday with 10 learners. It was amazing what they put forward. Ideas on all levels. Maybe it's a PowerPoint, maybe it's a drawing, a poem, a story. Yesterday, somebody actually did an interpretive dance virtually. We've had people sing, music. It's amazing. I highly recommend it because it makes the student really think about what they're doing. Now, how do we put these modules together? Well, many of you have seen them, and I would welcome everybody to visit our website. You will need access because it's still in development. But each of our modules has a video that the person can watch. It's a faculty member teaching it in a small studio. It's been edited. There are chapter marks. You can actually watch it at twice speed if you like to. Or you can listen to a podcast. The same audio tract has been pulled off. Or if you're a reader, you can actually read the transcript, and you'll notice the download button just by the end of my arrow. You can actually read the transcript with the embedded slides. You can review resources that we've linked you to, and we've given links to as many resources that we feel are relevant. And for people who like to, they can download the PowerPoint. And you can use the PowerPoint future, or you can use it for your learning. So we wanted to give many different approaches to access. Now, it turns out that our podcasts are now actually open access. There are over 80 of them on palmed.net. You don't need anything to access them. We've got not only the 25 documentary videos, but we also have all of our teaching that was live that we've videotaped. So many different topics. And if you're interested, they're actually on Spotify. Just look up the Palliative Care Interdisciplinary Curriculum, or you can actually get them on Google Podcasts. They're there as well. So I'm going to say to you, no education program is complete without evaluation. I'm going to give you a very light review of that, but given our program is a taste and never a test, people do seem to answer the pre and post course questions freely. And we've actually been using these questions for over 25 years. Assessments of attitudes, moral and ethical concerns, knowledge, self-perception of competence. They do an overall course evaluation. And in the last couple of years, we actually write people to write a personal reflection paper, again, enhancing what they present to us on the last day. How do we do? Well, you might be saying, I bet the in-person training is better than the remote training. Well, we've just actually unwrapped it for our last group of about 2 years. And you can look at all the p-values for moral and ethical concerns. You'll notice they're all identical. There's no difference in the two groups. It turns out that almost all the evaluations we do are almost identical. And you can see graphically that the p-value is highly significant in terms of change. This is one question which was I pulled out just to illustrate for you about withdrawing parenteral antibiotics. Does it violate ethical norms? People's perceptions change over the course. Highly significant. We also looked at the knowledge questions. And again, I'll say to you, no significant difference between the two groups. What we seem to be seeing is exposing people to the content does change attitudes, concerns, knowledge, and perception of competence. Now, the piece that we're not yet evaluating is what happens directly at the bedside as they practice, but we are incorporating some of that right here. And in fact, both groups improved their knowledge scores by 10 questions, so about 30% over 36 questions. So just to finish off, is this adaptable? Our reality is it is absolutely adaptable. Not only do we do about 150 medical students residents a year, but we now use it for palliative medicine fellows. This is where they start in the first month, and then they go onwards. We also have used it at many courses, such as the course we provided now twice in Malaysia. I've given you some numbers there, and I'm showing you the ripple effect. As we project into the careers of each of the people who participate, you begin to see that this single educational program, adapted, adjusted, can have a huge impact. And each year of education, we estimate we touch 2.6 million patients and families over the career of the physicians. Now, of course, it's not necessarily total depth, but it's real. And contrast that with how we do in terms of patient care. This is amazingly impactful. So, of course, careful attention to detail will lead you to sustainable education programs. And as our dear friend Nelson Mandela says, education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world. I look forward to walking with all of you and watch you change the world, starting with Malaysia. But I'm expecting you to be leaders in the region. Many people need you. Namaste for the opportunity. If there are any questions that pop up in the chat, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much for that, Frank. That was an amazing plenary. I mean, we are all here this weekend as learners, and so your valuable input will help us to become better learners. But directly or indirectly, we are also teachers and educators, whether it be to students, colleagues, but also patients, families, and communities. And so this will be really helpful for all of us to be part of this huge family of continuing and improving education in palliative care. So thank you for that, Frank. We don't have a dedicated Q&A session for the plenaries, but if anyone has any burning questions for Frank, he's kindly agreed to answer them in the chat box if you put it in there. Thank you so much, Frank, for that wonderful plenary. We'll now take
My
a few
pleasure.
minutes. Thank you. We'll now take a few minutes to set up the next plenary.